You're listening to the Love Unplugged podcast, episode 100. Today is 100 episodes, and I am just so excited. I just can't believe that time has passed this quickly, and we're already at 100, and I am just so grateful for all of the interviews I've been able to have, all the people that I've met, either virtually or in person. It's just been such a great experience, and to honor this huge milestone, I thought it would be pretty fun to go through some of your favorite shows from the past and share some clips from those episodes that you loved. Now, obviously, I can't share them all, so I am only selecting 16 episodes today. But I hope you guys enjoy this episode. I hope you guys like taking this little stroll down memory lane and listening to some of your favorite shows in the past with Love Unplugged. So without further ado, let's jump on in. Hey there, I'm your host, Jessica Fragon, and I am passionate about doing the inner work needed to reach your goals. Let me be your guide as we navigate all the fears and insecurities that surface when it's time to step outside of your comfort zone. Along with my knowledgeable guests and industry experts, I'm here to teach you how to reawaken your life purpose and passion and create the steps to turn your intentions into action. Ultimately, my goal is to empower you to rise above those blocks holding you back and start living a life that you are worthy and deserving of. So come on, it's time to slow down, find a comfy spot with your favorite organic tea, and get inspired. Thank you for tuning in to the Love Unplugged podcast. So my very first episode with a guest was with Danielle Connor, a graphic designer here in Vancouver. And it was such a great experience. I love Danielle. She's such a ray of sunshine, and she definitely has such a great take on life and just such a wonderful personality. And she brings just such joy to her community in the way that she shows up online. And I just love chatting with her about her journey. And we talked about her burnout, how she navigated that. We talk about how to show up on social media on those days that you're just not feeling so great and whatnot. And, the ups and downs and how we can be okay with that. I'm just going to share a little clip with you guys from that episode. I definitely encourage you to listen to the full episode if you haven't yet, but let's hear Danielle. Did you ever experience any challenges that made you kind of have to put in a little more effort into looking on the bright side? And how did you go about doing that?
Totally. I'm the kind of person that I always run like 500,000 miles an hour, and I'm always doing something. Today is a perfect example. I booked a few too many things back to back and was kind of running around like a chicken with my head cut off in between. But that led me to some pretty serious burnout last year. I dealt with some pretty serious stomach issues that stemmed from anxiety, and it just ended up being a lot. And I think it was just because I was running on adrenaline and fumes for so long that it really just caught up to me, and that was tough. And I think that was a time in my life where I really couldn't, it was hard. Like, I feel like if we're going through a hard time, the last thing you want to do is show up on social media and, be happy-go-lucky, and it feels fake. So I think those are the times where we kind of want to hide, and then we share after the fact, which is fine. Like, I went to see a therapist last year, which was really helpful. Mm-hmm. And she was saying, like, it takes a certain amount of, like, vulnerability to share. So you have to be, like, sure, you're still vulnerable, but you're, like, less vulnerable after the fact and after you've sort of been through the thick of it. And then when you're able to share, it's just wild how much support and encouragement you get around you, and how many people have also been through similar things, and that it's okay to go through that and to have periods of stress and anxiety, and that we all experience that. And if we can support one another and like encourage one another, and again, like, it's okay not to be happy and excited every single day. Like, that's not realistic, right? Mm-hmm. The reason, I get so excited about my trip is because most days aren't as exciting, and most days are, quieter days spent at my computer or like a little bit stressed out, and that's okay too. And it's trying to find that balance between the two, mm-hmm. I think, and know that like it's okay and life's gonna ebb and flow. And I'm such a believer that like life happens in seasons, so some seasons you're up and some seasons you're down, and what can you learn from those seasons and take with you?
Now, the next episode I want to feature is the one with Nalacare. So episode 6. And I absolutely love this one. It honestly almost brought me to tears. I was basically almost in tears in this episode, hearing the story behind how they created this business. And it's a mother-daughter duo. Now, they also gave me a little bit of an education session, sharing all the harmful ingredients that we might not be aware of that are included in those drugstore brand deodorants, especially the one that I was using, which was Clinical Strength. So I definitely learned a lot from this episode. And I can honestly say right now that I made the switch prior to that episode and I've stuck with it. So I haven't gone back to a brand store deodorant and I use Nala every day. So here's a little clip from our chat. But what are the other ingredients that people should be aware of that are actually not good for you that are in these drugstore deodorants?
So maybe I'll start on the high level and I'll let Mila kind of dig in deeper. But first and foremost, we will never shame. We'll never shame anybody for using a drugstore deodorant. And I think that's important to distinguish because even when we were developing our brand values and stuff, we said, no fear mongering, no shaming. It's not all or nothing. Because at the end of the day, it's a big change. It's a big process. It can be an expensive process, and we don't even tell people to clear out their medicine cabinets and buy all new, but rather slow, conscious decisions for parts of your life when it makes sense for your life. And I think that's important because if you can integrate it in a way that you're going to keep something as part of your routine, it's going to stick versus throwing out all of your expensive, $25 mascaras and foundations and deodorants and buying everything from scratch, you're going to go broke very fast.
Very fast.
So it's never all or nothing for us. For us, it's do what you can within your power in a way that makes sense. And you're doing the exact right thing is educate yourself, ask questions, investigate what you're using. And so kudos to that. I think that's all something that we're always proud when people do make that conscious decision for whatever kind of sparked it. So super high level, antiperspirant versus deodorant, and then maybe you can dig in on the actual deodorant or the ingredients. Antiperspirant, when you break it down, is quite literally anti-perspire. So it's a product created to stop sweating. And so many of these ingredients, aluminum of which is usually one, but also often a number of different chemicals and fillers, etc., things that make it glide super smooth, aren't necessarily the best for us. And so what they'll do is they'll clog our pores so that it makes it harder for sweat to come out. And what can get dangerous is that over time, this can kind of start to accumulate in the armpits, in the lymph nodes, get into the bloodstream, etc. Deodorants, natural or otherwise, you can have non-natural deodorants, but something just classified as a deodorant, but specifically natural deodorants, are designed to let your body sweat, which is very scary for a lot of people, but also teach your body how to regulate to sweat. And sometimes our bodies forget what that actually looks like to sweat normally. So we can get into it even later, a bit down the line. But what we tell people is there is an adjustment period when you switch to a natural deodorant. And part of it is certain deodorants, and specifically detoxes. We have one that's designed to help pull the toxins out. And this is the phase that gets a little bit funky and I think can steer a lot of people off. And that's why a big emphasis on our part is education. Because if you know what's coming and you know why it's doing, it's a lot easier to get over that hump. And there's things we say and provide to make your journey a little bit easier. But when you're pulling out potentially years of accumulation of toxins, A, you're going to stink a little bit more. And B, you might sweat a little bit more because there's ingredients such as charcoal, which is often one of them, that's actively magnetizing to some of that stuff that's stuck in your pits and pulling it out. And the beauty of it is over time, as you're sweating, your body understands, okay, this is normal. And you significantly reduce the actual odor that comes from sweat. And you touched on nervous sweat, which is everyday sweat, which is a whole other thing. And Mila can geek out on that. Yeah, there's different types of sweats and different types of solutions. But I found now there's days where I might forget to put deodorant on and I won't stink. I'll sweat, but it'll feel much more regulated. It'll feel less than I've sweat before. And it'll definitely be less stinky than I've sweat before. So that's the high level difference.
Now, the next episode that I'm sharing is episode 14 with Danielle Wiebe, founder of Business Babes Collective and Van City Business Babes, as well as some other chapters as well. But we talk about nurturing relationships. So, meeting people online and then taking those relationships offline. Asking to meet up, whether it's virtually right now because of COVID, having coffee via Zoom, or having a 5-minute phone call to connect with people, and the power of following up. So I hope you enjoy this episode. This is just a snippet of what we've talked about, so you definitely want to tune into the full episode to get our full chat.
When I started, it was more the struggle of like no one knew who we were, right? Like I was starting from complete scratch. Didn't have a social media following, didn't have any connections in the business world really. So I had to really start from scratch in building those relationships. And so this is something I always suggest for people is that yes, social media is amazing and use it for your business, but use social media to actually meet people and then take those relationships offline. So whether that's going for coffee with someone, or even picking up the phone and having a phone conversation. There's so many ways that we can connect off of social media these days, via Zoom. We use Zoom all the time for our business. So make those actual connections and those true relationships, because that's where the opportunities are going to come. So I would ask so many people for coffee. I would probably go out for coffee at least 5 times a week, if not more. And it was crazy at the time. It's definitely not something that you can sustain for long periods of time, but it was really good for me because I got to meet a lot of people and kind of just share with them my vision. And then from there, it kind of grew. But yeah, it was super hard to get people out to events because I didn't know anyone. And I was just starting to kind of market our events online. So learning how to do that and learning how to kind of market our events in a way that someone could, come to our social media and be like, "Ooh, I want to be at that event." So that was definitely the first kind of hurdle. It's so scary to reach out and just to put yourself out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I always try to think the worst they can say is no, or just not reply, right?
Exactly.
And then, you never know though in the future what that might turn into, because they might either not reply or they're, a lot of people are busy too, right? And so, but being kind of persistent as well. And, if you really want to meet someone, it's support what they're doing, if they have a podcast or if they are on social media, follow them, engage with them, support them. And then maybe one day, they'll recognize your name or whatever, and you'll get to have that kind of deeper relationship. So I always think if you're wanting to connect with someone and you're truly wanting to build that relationship, then take it upon yourself to support them and what they're doing. And then, ask them out for coffee, or ask them even just for a quick phone call. Cause maybe they won't have time for a 2.5 hour coffee, but they could have time for a 5-minute phone call, just to connect. And yeah, just being brave that way, I think really pays off, especially in the business world. So.
I mean, even I do, and I'm sure others do, kind of get a little nervous asking.
Oh, totally.
And I love how you said, be persistent, because it was that Instagram post that you said, follow up.
Yes.
And that actually got me to follow up with you.
Yes.
Which we end up here now. So it does work.
It's true.
But we often in business, my day job, I often follow up. I'm constantly following up. But when it comes to my personal business, I shrink back for some reason. And I think others might also, but there's nothing wrong with following up. You never know if that person has 10 billion emails in their inbox, or, maybe they have other things on the go and they just didn't see it in time and things like that. So you always kind of just want to check in if it's really important to you too, right?
Yeah.
The next episode I want to feature is episode 16 with Cassie Field, founder of Whoosh Tea and The Wild Ride. But in this episode, we are talking only about Whoosh Tea. So her journey to creating her business, the benefits of herbs and her teas. But in this clip, we are talking about tuning into what our body needs on a daily basis. And she is the queen of this. She's taught me many things in this regard, to slow down, to listen more and whatnot. So I hope you enjoy this episode, but you're definitely going to want to tune into the full episode because it is just jam-packed with so much information.
Have you ever struggled with finding a balance in life running a successful business?
Yes, majorly. That kind of goes into how, the frustration of a self-care routine and everything. And I'm in a big letting go phase. I'm just like along for the ride. And that's where I feel like I'm at. And Jessica just
drinking tea.
Jessica just took a sip of the tea and just made such a loving face. It was awesome. We're drinking Digest, by the way.
It's very good. Definitely go try it out.
Oh, I love this tea.
Okay, go on.
Sorry, where was I? Oh, yeah. So kind of the balance between running a business and self-care and life and social life, it's an ongoing balance, and you really gotta, or I have to kind of take it or leave it. But I've really found that whatever I'm prioritizing at this moment, and right now that's my business. And of course my social life is going to sacrifice for that. And often sometimes my self-care routine, but I'm definitely, over the past 6 months, I've really learned to let go and really let that just unfold how it's supposed to. And sometimes it's playing catch up. Sometimes it's taking a couple of days off work and only doing self-care. So I'm kind of more along for the ride and really allowing myself and giving myself that grace to, act in those moments of what I feel is necessary and right for me, my body, and my business. And I think when you can take moments like that and really look at those three elements and decide what's best, I think that's balance. Because I really hate the word balance.
It's a hard word.
Yeah, it's not really a thing. You can't really balance it all. Like, what does that mean? Like an hour, 2 hours in the morning of self-care, whatever, 8 hours of work or however many hours you work, and then and then a little bit of a social event, and then another self-care routine. Like, life doesn't function like that. I'm putting out fires left, right, and center in my business, and things happen, or a batch of orders come in, or just like a chaos week happens, or a new project just goes into fruition, or I'm really run down and feeling, really tired. And it's just like, hey, you know what? That entire batch of emails needs to wait till tomorrow. So yeah, I think it's more reading and being more intuitive about where you're at in that moment rather than what's this entire week or month going to look like.
Yeah.
So for the next episode I'm featuring, it's episode 19 with Megan Wallace, founder of Nutmeg Milk. Now we talk about her entrepreneurial journey. We talk about creating nut milk, so what that process looks like, her different blends and whatnot. But in this clip, we talk about how she thought she wanted a job in the corporate world, but doing so taught her that it's actually not what she wanted. So it was still a valuable lesson for her. So let's tune in.
So let's start with your journey to becoming an entrepreneur. Did you always want to be your own boss, have your own business, or was this something that kind of became as you went through all this schooling and whatnot?
Yeah. Well, actually, I had never wanted to be an entrepreneur. Like, that was just not something that I saw other people doing it as I was younger, and just thought that's not really the path. I sort of envisioned myself in a pencil skirt and heels, working my way up the corporate ladder and doing all that kind of stuff, which, I did for a period of time before I realized that it's just not for me. I think the biggest thing for me was that sort of pivotal moment when I'm like, oh, I don't think I like to be tied to my desk from Monday to Friday, from 9 to 5. Like, I need a little bit of flexibility and to do the things that I love while I'm working. So that just kind of opened up my eyes to potentially doing something on my own or freelance or whatever. And then, I just took a workshop one day to make my own nut milk, and it kind of sparked a curiosity in me. And I'm very decisive and determined. And I just was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I
jumped right in.
Yeah.
Okay. So why did you choose nut milk? So you took this class, and I know it was like a 2-hour class from what I've read.
Yeah. So actually my sister-in-law is a holistic nutritionist. And I wanted to support her, and I also wanted to learn how to make them because I can't do dairy. And quite frankly, I kind of found the idea of drinking a glass of milk, even as a kid at the dinner table, like it turned me off. I didn't like it. So I know the store-bought almond milks, as you know, have kind of a weird taste, and
they are not
very good. So when I took the workshop and tried what real almond milk tastes like, I was just blown away. I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever had. Like, how have I not known about this my whole life? Like, it was an immediate sort of like aha moment for me.
Growing up for myself, my mom was very like organics only, no dairy. I mean, she had powdered milk in the house, which I'm sorry, but children are not going to drink that.
No.
But she had almond milk, and it was the regular like store brand ones. And I hated it. Yeah. I hated it. The taste was just so wrong to me. Mm-hmm. So I always had this, this feeling in me growing up all the way till like probably a few years ago that I was like, no, I'm not doing almond milk. There's no way. It all tastes bad. And I'm not going to spend money on it because I know what it's going to taste like, because I just compared it to what it was like when I was younger. And then I came across Califia.
Yeah.
Califia.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I know.
And I'm like, okay, this is different.
Yeah.
This is different.
That one's probably the better of any of the store ones that I've tried.
It's probably, it's good. It's tolerable, right? And then I came across yours and I'm like, hallelujah. Like, it's just such a mild blend, but you can pick up all of the different notes of the ingredients that you put in it, which keeps it so interesting. And I was just like, this is how it should be. Thank God. Like, she has something like this out there.
I'm literally giddy hearing you say that, because it doesn't matter how much time passes, hearing something like that still just like,
it's good.
You kind of lose sight of the connection that customers have with your product sometimes, especially when you're not selling it yourself. So to hear that feedback is always just like kind of reconnects me to why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I appreciate that.
Anytime.
The next episode I am featuring is episode 20 with Erin Treloar, founder of Raw Beauty Talks. I absolutely loved chatting with Erin, and she shares such incredible insights on creating healthy relationships with our body, with food. And here's a clip from that episode where she talks about how she sets a good example for her children. So definitely tune into the entire episode. She shares incredible advice and such an amazing experience that we can all be inspired from.
The most important work we can do as mothers and women is the work we do on ourselves, is changing the beliefs we have about ourselves, our own self-worth, what beauty and wellness and health means to us, how we intake, digest, and respond to media. And as we get better at doing that, as we become more conscious, aware, and awake, we teach our kids the same thing. And the messages that we pass along to them will be a lot different. If you are constantly weighing yourself in front of your kids, or talking negatively about a body part, or examining a body part in the mirror, they are picking up on all of that stuff. So, if that's the place that you're in right now, don't beat yourself up, because we live in a culture that perpetuates that pressure on us. So it's really about becoming conscious of the fact that you're doing it, and then deciding how it is you want to show up in your life and for your kids. So I don't weigh myself. My husband does sometimes, because he trains for triathlons and things. So I have had some very strict conversations with him, being like, our kids will not see you weighing yourself, because that, at the end of the day, the weight on the scale isn't what's important. What's important is that they are, in creating joyful, like beautiful relationship with food and movement, and that will set the foundation for the rest of their life, and everything else will work out from there.
I love that, because children do pick up on everything. If they see you on your phone all the time, they're going to want to be on your phone as well. They're like little copycats.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Yes. If I have my phone out, I have 2 kids on my lap. They're like, what are you looking at? We want to see videos. Like, yeah, and none of that is bad to a certain extent. But for me, it's way more important to be connected to them than the internet, to be connected to them than my phone. So it just, I have to put the systems in place as a mature adult to create what it is that I want in my life. And I want them more than my Instagram feed.
All right. The next episode I am featuring is episode 21 with Natalie Langston. And this is the episode to listen to if you are a new mom and you are needing some advice on how you can navigate that whole new experience and juggle all the many responsibilities while you also have a career. And we are just going to listen to a little clip for some advice that she has for new moms. So do you have any last advice for new mothers?
Well, stay calm is huge. I was literally just texting with my girlfriend Natalia last night about her situation, and I was like, you know what? Stay calm, and when you're about to lose your mind, just take a deep breath. And just remember, it's just a season. It will pass. And the funny thing is, whether you get onto a routine or not, whether they're teething and it's so awful, or you're finally getting onto their routine and you're like, I get it now, it's gonna change. And it's only a season and it will pass. So just remember that when you're in the thick of it, that it will get easier. When I was breastfeeding him and all he wanted to do was be held, and I could barely get through the day with doing anything because I had to hold him for 2 hours sometimes while he napped. And he wanted up and to be on me, and I loved it, but I also was like, I need space and you to be off me and to do anything like a shower. It was so hard. But now he is a lot more independent. Like when he's teething, of course, he wants to be held, but he's able to explore and go do his thing. And I'm able to now do some emails and have more of my own freedom and life like I used to. And it does get easier. But I mean, sometimes it's really hard when you're in it to
see through
remember that.
Weeds, yeah.
Exactly. But it does get easier. No, Pierce. And then don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't feel like you need to be the hero. It's okay to ask for help, and no one's going to think differently of you. And I have a lot of help, and I am fortunate that I do, but I couldn't do what I do without the help. And like I said, for your own sanity, it's huge if you get out every day. Do things that make you feel good about yourself. A massage, a new pair of shoes, get your hair, nails done. At least one thing every day if you can. From the very beginning, like I said, I would pack him up and we would get out every single day. Even just for a coffee and a walk, I made sure to get outside the house for some fresh air and a new perspective. And that's equally as good for your baby too, because if he's being cooped up inside all day, it's not good for him either. He sleeps better. He's a better baby if he's gotten fresh air, and just that perspective, and to be able to explore and see the sky and the trees and birds and new things, so.
All right, episode 29 with Sarah Therese is up next, and she talks all about her entrepreneurial journey, what it's like juggling her work responsibilities while also raising 3 children that are young children at home. So in this clip, she is giving a little bit of what she does to schedule her time and how she navigates all of that. But you're definitely going to want to tune into the full episode because she shares a lot of great advice for doing so.
When I had Ivy, I had to work to actually be busy for some reason. I wanted to get out. I wanted to see people. I was involved in a lot of first time mom groups. I worked really hard to be busy because she napped a lot and she just wanted to eat, and she was very,
they're having fun up there.
And she was very happy to entertain herself. So I had to really fight to be busy with Ivy. But then as every kid has come and as we welcome more kids in, I have to prioritize my time hugely. That is the only way that I'm able to stay at home, keep tabs on my home, make it a beautiful, clean, happy place, make dinner, meal prep, serve my family, serve people outside of my family, and work and create a business and a brand from home. It's all about really being on top of
everything.
It's the scheduling, and it's I think especially planning. I almost have nothing in my week that surprises me ever. I'm so on top of things that nothing in my week surprises me, or I don't let things in my week surprise me, because it's just, I can't do it because I'm so set on doing these key things. This is my goal for the day. This is what I need to do today. This is stuff pertaining to my kids that I need to focus on. And I can't believe how busy I am now and how much I really have to manage my time now, but it is doable. I think a lot of moms come to me and they're intimidated and they want to work from home and they're like, how do I do it? Is this doable? And my first answer is it's always doable. And you have to start somewhere. The best thing you can do is start.
It's true. Yeah. Don't overthink it. Just
don't
start.
overthink it, right? Too many people overthink it and they want it to be a certain way and they over professionalize it, which takes a lot of just your character out of it. And for me, a lot of people, they come back to my channel, they say, Sarah, you could make a video where you're like sewing buttons on a top, like an ugly top, and we would actually still watch that video. So it's not even so much getting people to love your brand or your content, but just you in general. Like that's what people come back for when it comes to my videos and my channel. They come back just for me, which is so crazy to think about. Isn't that so crazy to think about? It's so humbling and it's really beautiful to even just kind of think like that. So when it comes to my content, it needs to be full of me. Because that's why people come back. And I know that I don't want that to sound proud.
No.
But
they're connecting with
you. They're connecting with me, right? And it feels so much more personable and more like a friendship.
Definitely agree.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So do you have any tips or hacks for staying on top of things with more than one child? I've kind of seen a little bit of your world today and with 3 kids running around and you are just so relaxed and at peace in the kitchen, just making dinner. And here I am, I have one kid on me, one kid in my arms, and the other one's showing me your entire house.
Yes.
I wouldn't be able to get anything done.
I know.
I don't know how you do it.
You know what? It's very busy in here, and I say this a lot, and a lot of people can take this the wrong way, but I mean it in a very, this is a very good tool to give yourself and your kids. There needs to be a healthy disconnect between you and your kids at certain times of the day. A lot of people want to be 24/7, hands-on with their kids, on the ground, playing with them, giving them what they want, holding them. And for me, there's definitely times in my day where I need to do that for my kids because they're kids and they need that. But there's also times where I need to clean and I need to be on the phone, and I need to work, and I need to make dinner and get everything else done in between. So one of the best things that I can do is actually disconnect from my kids a little bit and give them the ability to go play and go entertain themselves.
Now, episode 35 with Desiree Nielsen, registered dietitian. This was such a great chat. I learned everything about digestion from when food enters your mouth to the moment that it leaves your rectum. And it was just such a great chat that it actually turned into 2 episodes. So the very first one, episode 35, we focused on the digestive process. And then the second episode, we talked about foods and what your poop should look like, all of that. But here's a little clip from episode 35 to give you guys a little bit of an example of what that process is like when food goes into your mouth and makes its way down.
Okay, so let's get to know our guts. When we eat, so I read this in a book and it completely fascinated me. So for anybody who doesn't know how it all works, it was totally fascinating. So explain to me food, how it goes from your mouth all the way down to your rectum.
Okay, let's do this. I totally love this. I was actually just writing about this yesterday for something. When you eat, actually before you eat, the process of digestion begins. So as soon as you start thinking about eating, so say you're like, I'm hungry, I'm going to make myself some lunch. As soon as you do that, your brain starts sending messages to your digestive tract to prepare it for the digestion process.
Interesting.
Pretty great. Think about it. So think about sucking on a really sour lemon right now.
And my mouth watered.
Your mouth waters, exactly. Thinking about the lemon produced saliva in your glands and it released that saliva. The reason why you need that saliva is as soon as you put food in your mouth, that saliva contains amylase, which is a carbohydrate enzyme. So if you were to put like a little piece of white bread in your mouth and not chew it, the amylase would just break it down all on its own. Word to the warning, if that happens with anything you eat, it's probably not super healthy, but it can happen. So the amylase starts to break down the carbohydrates in the food, and then you chew. You chew and the saliva lubricates the food. And chewing is actually one of the most critical parts of the digestive process. Most of us barely chew our food. Like really, really, we don't chew our food. You know, our parents would have been like, oh, chew your food like 100 times. Just try chewing your food 20 times, like at dinner tonight. But the reason why it's so important is because everything that happens next is based on surface area. So when you grind and tear the food with your teeth, you're increasing that surface area for all of the enzymes that are going to attack those nutrients and break them into absorbable pieces. So then you swallow. And once you swallow, you completely give up conscious control of digestion, except for the very end event. We'll talk about it in a second. So what happens is that your nervous system, your gut, is really heavily innervated, which means it has a lot of nerve cells. There's actually more nerve cells in your digestive tract than there are in your spinal cord. And so your nervous system initiates a rhythmic wave called peristalsis that moves everything through. It takes more than just gravity to like help all that food through. Because if you think about it, you have like meters and meters of digestive tract all crammed into your abdomen, and it takes a lot of twists and turns, and like gravity will not get you there. So once you do that, it goes into your stomach. The presence of food in your stomach and the physical stretching of your stomach activates more stomach acid, protein enzymes that start breaking down. So the acid proteins look like little knots. And so the acid starts unraveling those knots, and then the protein enzymes start cutting it up so that you can digest it better.
All right, so episode 38 is up next, and that is with Lauren Kerr. Now, she has such a great approach and mindset around limiting beliefs. And here's a little bit of a clip on what that is, but definitely tune in to the full episode to hear all her great advice on how we can navigate those fears, those blocks that we experience, whether in our personal lives or in our entrepreneurial journeys.
So I want to talk about mindset because that's such an important thing. I think people really don't put enough focus on mindset and how much it can impact your life in a good way or a bad way. So I kind of want to learn about what your journey or your experience has been with mindset. Did you ever come across limiting beliefs that you had to overcome, or did you ever go through periods of having a negative mindset that you had to change?
Yeah, I think this is a big part of my mission and my message is that everyone does. It's you're not broken for having self-limiting beliefs or feeling like you're feeling challenged or you're not feeling happy and elated and excited. You're human. That's the way your brain is wired. It's like happiness and sadness are the two sides of the same coin. Like you can't be happy and elated all the time, but the trick is understanding how your brain works and how it's wired. So that way when you don't beat yourself up, you're not broken, you're not a failure. No, it's not just you. No, it's not, because I know, especially with social media these days, where a lot of us are comparing ourselves to other people, being like, but it looks so easy for her and she's always winning and she's so confident, she's got all this. But those feelings, like everyone has the feelings of self-doubt. Everyone has self-limiting beliefs. Everyone has days where they don't feel ecstatic. You're human. I think if people understand the duality in life instead of keep chasing perfection and chasing fulfillment, you're going to realize that you're not broken, you're enough. Life happens in duality, and you're going to be more kinder and compassionate with yourself, which allows you to be more kinder and compassionate to others as well.
Definitely. So what types of limiting beliefs have you experienced? Like I know with myself, I struggle a lot with the social media aspects and, the comparison game. That's one of my biggest stumbles, I guess. But what was yours?
And it's hard because I don't mean to say, I don't know how to say this, but it's not that I don't have limiting beliefs, but I just don't see them as limiting beliefs. They're just how your brain works. Like obviously I've had days where I've been like, I don't know if I can do that, or I don't know if I can achieve that, or I'm worried what other people will think, or I'm worried I'm going to fail, or I'm worried I'm going to embarrass myself, or I'm worried that I have those days and those feelings are normal, but I don't tell myself that's a limiting belief, or I don't tell myself that I've got to work on that in order to get to the next stage. I'm aware that, there goes my mind again trying to keep me safe, or there goes that's how your brain is worked. It's just being aware of it, but not having the understanding or the education to be like, you know what? thank you, I hear you, but I know what I'm doing. Or thank you, I hear you, but I'm excited to do this. Or thank you, I hear you, but this is my mission. Or thank you, I hear you, but I'm going to enjoy this. And I'm going to have so much fun. I'm going to regret it if I don't. So I have all those feelings that every people have. I just don't think I think it's because it's obviously helped that I've been studying this for nearly 10 years now, that I don't look at any of them and think something's broken and I have to fix that or I have to address that in order to get to that next level. I'm just like, oh, I have the awareness of it and I accept it in its duality, but don't let it keep me from moving forward.
Angela Simpson from The Gratitude Project is up next with episode 42. And here we are talking about gratitude. So how can we deepen our gratitude practice so that it's actually making an impact in our lives? So here's a clip from that episode, but this is one of my favorite chats. I absolutely love Angela. So definitely tune into the full episode to learn more about her and her journey.
So my biggest thing when it comes to a gratitude practice is when gratitude is done properly, it should be something that brings you to tears. It should be something that you literally feel so deep in your core that you could cry. So I think the problem with how a lot of people are doing it these days is exactly what you said. You know, I'm grateful for the roof over my head. My dinner was super yummy. My kids are really cute and they behaved today. Yada, yada, yada. I'm just going to do that and it's done. And people are like, I'm not seeing the effects of gratitude. Like, what is going on? It's got to be something that hits you at your core. So first and foremost, if it is, say, journaling or writing things down, it's saying to yourself, okay, I'm going to do this in a space. I'm going to have a beautiful ritual around it. It can be a 5-minute ritual. It doesn't need to take up your whole life. But, you know, before bed, I'm going to light a candle or put on some essential oils or have some music playing. And I'm going to take myself back through my day. And I'm going to ask myself, what are the moments that I could find gratitude in? And I'm actually going to relive them, because when you sort of think yourself through a situation that you've been through, your body actually produces the same happy hormones in a smaller amount, but the same hormones as when you actually experienced it. And so whether that's, you know, someone paid for my coffee when I was in line at the coffee shop, or whether it's, you know, my partner came in this morning and he kissed me on the forehead before he went to work and he smelled really good, and I just felt immense gratitude for how lucky we are to have found each other. Like, if you can sit and actually think through it, I could take you through 3 things I'm grateful for about yesterday, and I could bring myself to tears if I went deep enough into it, because that level of gratitude is so powerful. And I think the problem is so many people are trying to do it quickly or trying to just do the surface stuff, whereas you really need to say to yourself, okay, what am I so grateful for right now that if I lost it, my life would be so different? Or if it didn't happen, I wouldn't be where I am today. What are those things? You know, I think all of the mothers out there can relate that when you think back and actually walk yourself through the birth of your first child, you will cry because it's a really full-on experience. And if you really are so deeply moved by something your partner did, the gratitude you have for that person can bring out feelings and emotions that you don't get to feel that often. And I think that my biggest lesson over the last 8 or 9 years has been, I was someone who was scared to feel, and feeling has actually given me so much. So every single day, I want to feel my emotions to the biggest capacity, to the, you know, most extreme that I can possibly feel them, good and bad, because that is what makes life worth living, when we're really feeling the things that we need to feel.
For the next episode I'm featuring, that is episode 50 with Sydney of The Working Girl. And we talk about her entrepreneurial journey, how to determine what success actually means to you, and not to focus on the numbers. It's not always about the numbers, and how she navigated that, because she, just like many of us, can sometimes get discouraged by the following that we have compared to others. But she has just such a great mindset around that, and I absolutely loved it. So here's a little clip from that episode talking about that. But if you're looking for more entrepreneurial advice, you're definitely going to want to tune into the full chat. How did you organize yourself so that you were able to, give 100% to that side hustle to keep the momentum going until you were able to take that leap?
I think it just comes down to really being passionate about it. Because like there's no shortcut, and like the time, you have to spend the time. The time has to be spent because like we were saying, it takes the time to figure out what is my voice, what is my aesthetic, what colors do I like? Like it takes time to figure all that out. So you kind of have to like expect that you need to put in that time.
Enjoy the process.
Yeah. And trust the process, because as grueling as it is, it's there for a reason. And I know not a lot, but I know a handful of girls, even in Vancouver, who kind of exploded when they came out. And I feel like for me, that used to frustrate me a lot, because this is year 7 for me. And if I was going just off of numbers on Instagram, I might be kind of discouraged. But I think there's a place for everyone, and you just kind of have to figure out where your place is.
It's crazy that you would feel like that, because I look at you and I'm like, wow, she's like super successful. But even those that you may think are super successful still have those feelings.
100%.
Right? Which is just natural when you're looking at other people on Instagram.
I think that's why it's important not to look at other people.
Yes.
It also just comes down to your perspective. Because like me, I could look at my Instagram following and be super devastated that I'm 7 years in and I don't have 100,000 followers. I have like 20,000 amazing followers, and that is my community. Those are my people. And I think for a while, like I said, that was really kind of upsetting, because I felt like I was putting all this time and energy into it. But if you think about it, one day I was like, 20,000 people isn't that many people. And then I really thought about it, and I was like, 20,000 people fits into Rogers Arena, which is like where all the concerts are held. If you're not in Vancouver, you're not familiar. So when you're standing in the stadium looking around, and that stadium fills 20,000 people, and those 20,000 people are checking in with you every day and listening to every word that you're saying, that's pretty powerful. So I think it ultimately comes down to like, what is success for you? Success for me is not my follower count on Instagram. Success is like the community that I'm building, the business that I'm building, even outside of sponsorships. So I do like a lot of capsule collections. I don't know if you've seen. Mm-hmm. I do like other things that hopefully will live a little bit longer than just Instagram.
Yeah. Quality over quantity.
For sure. 100%.
I love
that. Episode 66 is up next, and that's with Holly of Teach Me Style. And I love chatting with her because she took her side hustle to full time, and she was incredibly consistent with showing up in her community. And I learned how she managed her time and what that looks like. So here's a little clip from that episode. But if you're looking to take your side hustle full time, definitely tune in to hear her advice and her experience.
I'm an early riser, so would wake up early. But I also I don't watch TV, which I know that's not, some people do, and that's totally fine. But for me, I can't just sit and watch TV. I'm always kind of a busy bee. I love doing things. So just honestly prioritizing your time, and a lot of late nights, truly at the beginning, no ifs, ands, or buts. When I set my mind to something, I am stubborn as all hell. I will do whatever it takes to do it. And I, for 3 years, no matter what was going on in my life, I did 3 blog posts a week and 6 Instagrams. It didn't matter what was going on. I made it happen. And some days I would be staying up till 3 a.m. and then teaching the next day. I also was really strict with my schedule. So I would get to school by 8, do my before school work, first recess, I always did supervision because I do believe that is so important. It's definitely not a requirement, but I just think it's so important to build and nurture those relationships outside of the classroom. You see kids in such a different light on the playground. So although I didn't really have the time to do it, if that makes sense, I probably could have used the mental break. I just always, made sure that I did that. And then I also did lunchroom. And with lunchroom, everybody has to sit in their desk. And I would use that time to work on my blog, answer emails. But I would also obviously be playing games with the kids. So when everybody was sitting in their desks eating lunch, I was eating, but at the same time, I was answering emails. And then at 12:15 or 12:30, when it was time for the kids to get out of their desk, then we would play games, or then I would do things and I'd close my computer and be with the kids. And then 2:15 recess, I never went to the staff room, or very rarely went to the staff room. I would use that time to answer emails. Then after school, I would set my timer for an hour and put my phone on do not disturb and just like crush it out. I could see as much, like I would make a list and just hammer out as much work as I could in that hour. Then I would go home, make dinner, have like about an hour and a half just to like hang out. And then I would start my second job at like 7 till whatever time it took me to get everything done. Sometimes it was 3 a.m. Sometimes it was 10. Like it just kind of depended what I had going on. And in the beginning, it was a lot easier because it was more just like I didn't have really deadlines. So I could do kind of whatever I had wanted. And then the last probably 2 or 3 years, it was more like, okay, now I have this deadline of this project that I'm working on and I need to be more aware, like putting that, just like prioritizing different things.
Next up is Nicole Jardim of episode 74, where we take a deep dive into our periods and everything that we go through in our bodies during our cycles. But this clip is a little bit of a sneak peek into how we can sync our cycles to our business. So when we should be doing something versus when we shouldn't be based on where we are at in our cycles. So you're definitely going to want to tune in. I learned a ton from this episode, things that I'm embarrassed to say I didn't actually know. As an entrepreneur, how can you use your cycle to be at your best for your business? So like,
this is so good.
This is, a period or a phase that maybe you should be making decisions and you should be super creative and like kind of spending time in that zone. And then in this phase, you should stay away from this. And
Totally. Yes. I really love that you asked this question because it really is part of our ability to kind of harness our innate superpowers, I suppose you could say, because we have these cycles and they are mostly a monthly cycle. I consider a regular or normal menstrual cycle to be anywhere from 25 to 35 days. So we're looking mostly at a month for the majority of us. And what is so amazing is that we change almost on a weekly basis. In fact, we're kind of like a different person almost every week of our cycle, which is incredible. And it can be a really good thing. I think we certainly need to flip the script on hormones and the reputation that hormones have, generally speaking. But yes, like when you think about your menstrual cycle and how to align it with your life and your business, there's so much that can be done. So when you're thinking about your period and that first week or so of your cycle, usually this is a time where your body is like, listen, lady, I am really trying to just chill out here. So I feel like women we should harness that because we don't get a lot of opportunity to rest and our bodies are literally asking us to rest. I mean, we are actually bleeding without dying. And I feel like we should try and honor that and just take a moment, take a breath if we can. And, I know that is not at all optional for a lot of people. And so even if you can build in 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there of just closing your eyes, doing a meditation, deep breathing, whatever it is that brings you down, takes your nervous system offline is what you need to do for yourself. And so this is a time where you really have to take it down a notch. And I always recommend not taking interviews during this time, not doing public speaking, not doing anything forward facing, outwardly facing that is going to require you to be using your cognitive function at its peak. So that's really what I ask women to do during this time. Like think about how you can just take it down a notch and really take care of yourself as best you possibly can. And then focus on the internal. During this time, it's really great to plan out your month. Think about what it is you want the month to look like. How can you visualize, what the coming weeks will look like and what it is that you are envisioning for your business during this time?
Next up is Chloe Wild of episode 85, where we talk about a lot of different things. So her journey to creating her business, winning the Much BJ search contest, but we also dive into her interviewing tips. So here's a little bit of a clip on the different tips that she has for interviewing guests. Now, I want to dive into interviewing. So I've seen on your website, on Healthy is Hot, all that stuff, that you've interviewed a lot of people and you've interviewed celebrities. And I'm dying to know how you navigated that because, interviewing is not always easy. Sometimes you do get nervous. speaking to certain people, sometimes it's hard to kind of keep that energy up, to keep them intrigued and, energized in the interview and whatnot. So I'd love to know how you navigated that, how you maintained composure, how you created like creativity in the types of the questions that you were asking to keep it fresh and interesting.
Oh, there's a lot in that question. Interviewing is, I think, to anyone who's listening who might be thinking about starting a podcast, or, everyone is creating their side hustles and pivoting right now with the pandemic, which I think is incredible. And I'm seeing so much more content and business ventures online, which is fantastic. But yeah, interviewing can be a really intimidating process. But I think the most important thing to keep close to your heart when you interview anyone is to stay ultimately a very curious individual. Because when you're interviewing someone, you're hoping to not only gather information, but more than that, you want to create a space for people to have a moment, for something unexpected to happen. And for that to unfold, rapport needs to be built. And I think, for going into an interview, sometimes they're high stakes. Sometimes you're with a huge star. You have 4 minutes. Right now we're in a pandemic, so everything is happening remotely and virtually. It can be really difficult to build rapport, but you kind of got to go in and give it your all. Bring the energy you hope to receive on the other end, and to be present. You go into an interview, and you know this from podcasting. Yes, you have your questions and your research, but being present allows for those moments to arise that maybe weren't planned, but might bring you in a really new direction. So showing up with the energy you hope to receive, being prepared, of course, remembering to always be curious. And then the last most important thing is something I learned when I first started in the industry, when I had zero confidence. I went to improv at Second City. And the first thing they teach you is this notion of yes and. So whatever happens in an interview, you take that and you build upon it. And, it comes back to active listening and being present. But there is always somewhere you can go in an interview. So if you get stumped or you get nervous, just listen to the person on the other side. Be present enough and be curious enough to see where that conversation might go.
And the last episode I am featuring is episode 91 with Jam Gamble. And she is helping us dive deep into finding our voice and how we can use it in an impactful way. So here is a little clip from that episode. But if you are struggling with this, I definitely encourage you to tune in to the full chat to hear everything that she has to share on this topic.
First off, I'm on a mission to delete or block the word public in front of public speaking. I hate the term public speaking, because what it essentially says is that the only time you're speaking is when you're in front of an audience and you have the microphone and everyone's attention, versus how do you speak in your everyday life? How do you speak to yourself? How do you speak to your partner? How do you speak in your business? How do you speak at events? How do you speak to your friends? Like, your voice goes everywhere with you. So one of the biggest obstacles is overcoming the barriers that are holding your voice back in the first place. And we all have a barrier. Once you identify who that barrier is or what that barrier is, then that is the first step in moving past those insecurities and learning to trust your voice. And I think if people spent a little bit more time investigating what is making them so fearful in the first place, one, they're going to realize that, okay, that's not that scary after all. And then two, when they're able to identify that, then they know, okay, this does not serve me. This person does not serve me. I'm now ridding that situation of my life, and I'm now going to proceed and trust myself to speak, to share my thoughts, to share my opinion. And again, my favorite question, what is the worst thing that could happen when you use your voice? Not much, but what's the best things that could happen when you use your voice? And the list is like long. It's super long when you outweigh what's the worst versus what's the best. And I think if we operate in a what's the best mindset, that will give people the push they need to start speaking up.
Oh, I love that. Now, in your community, what have you seen as the most common reasons people struggle with finding their voice?
Past trauma. Lots of past trauma. PTSD. And PTSD, I know we think of is from violent situations or scary situations where your health was at risk or you're put in danger. but there's a lot of PTSD and unresolved trauma from past relationships, from people we've worked with, so past bosses, stage fright. Like the amount of clients I've worked with who have stage fright memories from elementary school. When I was in grade 5, I was doing the spelling bee and I spelled a word wrong and everybody laughed at me and I ran off the stage and nobody asked me afterwards how I was feeling. And that person is like now 36 years old and they've still carried that memory with them.
Wow.
So people have compared the Slay the Mic program to like a bit of life coaching meets personal branding meets biz strategy and then personal like public speaking coaching. It's like it's all in one, because in order to own your voice, we need to do that deep work. And then when we do that deep work, then the possibilities are endless.
So this is it. This marks my 100th episode, and I hope you guys enjoyed taking this little trip down memory lane with me. I hope that I featured some of the episodes that you wanted to hear from, but I definitely encourage you all to go back and listen to those episodes that maybe you have missed, because there are some amazing stories and great advice shared throughout the episodes. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to all my past guests for taking the time out of their busy lives and schedule to join me on the podcast, to share their story, to be vulnerable, to share their advice, their knowledge, and their experience with me and with you guys. It has been a true honor to be able to share those stories with you. So I hope that you continue to tune in, and I am so looking forward to bringing you more amazing guests, incredible stories, and advice to help you on your own journeys. I'm Jessica, and thanks for tuning in today to Love Unplugged, the podcast. If there are any questions or topics you'd love answered on the show, head on over to www.projectloveco.com and share your request with me. If you haven't yet, go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and share it with a loved one. Your feedback means the world to me, and the community we've created is what fuels our discussions here. After all, this is all for you. Join me next time for another unplugged conversation.